All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And Dan, welcome. And Dan, I love, I am still remembering what we talked about before because I was like, Dan, how do you pronounce your last name? And I remember what you told me. It's like, Kev, it's like pirates. It's Heuertz like pirates. And I
No better way to say it. No better way to say it. And you still can't spell it based on that, but at least you can say it.
That's right.
Yeah.
You and I were talking just a little bit before we hit the record, and I am just really excited and honored to have this conversation with you
Thank you.
today. And I want to start by giving a shout out to Rick Martinez because Rick is a close mutual friend for both of us.
Yep.
He is the one that connected you and I. Without Rick's role in this, you and I wouldn't even be here right now.
That's right. No, I love Rick. He's been a long time entrepreneurial buddy of mine. We met many, many years ago in EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, and we've had just some great experiences together.
Yeah. And, you know, what a testament to the power of relationships and what this podcast is all about, which is relationships and honoring those relationships in our lives and acknowledging them and I have long believed that as entrepreneurs, relationships are the most valuable asset we possess. Everything else stems from that. The bulk of the people who follow this podcast, who are entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, they are also people who place a high value on relationships and stuff. And so, Rick, yes, thank you much for your role in this. I just love you and appreciate you, and looking forward to have this conversation with you today, Dan. And so, what I'd like to do is start off by turning it over to you and letting you share a little bit, letting you, provide a little bit of context for the listeners and a little bit about who you are. So talk about, what inspires you most about the work that you do, who you serve, how you serve them, all of that kind of stuff. And we'll just start there, Dan.
Yeah, thanks. So the best and most concise way to tell my story and what I'm about is, I'm a lifelong entrepreneur, and that means I've done a lot of different things, and I haven't done one thing for a long period of time.
Okay.
There have been some common themes, but in terms of, I can't say to anyone that I've owned a single business for 20 or 25 years. It's just not my entrepreneurial journey.
Mm-hmm.
I started in college. I opened up a bar, did not know what I was doing, and thankfully, it worked out, which led me to opening up 5 bars before I graduated. And then I graduated and moved to Chicago and opened up a bunch of restaurants. And the journey just led me from one place to another. And it's been interesting because it's always been a collaboration. So relationships, if you will.
Yep.
I recognized early on that I'm good at what I do, but I also need someone else. I'm not that one guy that has it all figured out. I'm definitely not that. So that I've learned. Currently, just to fast forward it all, I'm an EOS implementer. I also have some interest in the hospitality space in hotels as well. But really what I do day to day is I'm an EOS implementer and working on a really interesting project with my youngest son, Ben, which involves, we're calling it the Skinny platform, but the Skinny. And the idea there is how to write impactful books, but using brevity. So here's the Skinny is what we're trying to get at.
Okay.
And that's one side of the project. And the other side of the project is a retreat center where entrepreneurial teams could come, have, retreat with their team and their teammates. And we're working on that as well and trying to figure that out right now. And that's kind of a married, it's not kind of, it is a marriage of my two past, which are, and present, which is one hospitality, hotel business, restaurant, hotel business, and facilitation through my EOS practice. And I'm really excited about it because you can really make, I mean, sometimes life change, but certainly a long lasting impact on people at those retreats because they're away from it all and they get to just, shift gears and just be their genuine self. And usually good things happen then when they're in that type of setting.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I'm just thinking about my own, and I know, the conversation that we had before we hit recording about, taking extended periods of time
Yep.
away from our businesses to give our brains chance to just relax and our bodies a chance to relax and recover and recuperate and rejuvenate,
That's the word I focus on. I think rejuvenation is the key word.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so, what are some things that you've seen come from this kind of experience for these entrepreneurs that you've seen participate in this kind of experience that you were just talking about?
Well, so first of all, I'll tell you, there's a few things I've learned from doing this for a couple decades of being in a forum. And the things that I've seen come out of taking that time is probably two things are the most dominant that I can say. One is it's a simple word, but it's so hard to actually get there, which is just clarity. You've taken the time to actually think. Instead, we're so busy doing all the time. And just that time where I've thought it through enough that, wow, I actually have clarity on whatever the issue is that they're thinking about. And I think the setting really has a big impact on that. You have to have the right setting for that. If it's just another busy day, even though you're taking some time away, that's just all that it is. It's just in that same motion that you go through day in and day out. And you gotta change the setting in order to, really gain some deep clarity.
Yeah.
So that's certainly one side of it. The other side might be a little surprising, but it's no longer surprising to me. And that is be surprised with some clarity how emotional that can be. And in a couple of different ways. It can be emotional because you might all of a sudden realize just how grateful you are for whatever you're thinking about. Generally for me, it almost instantly reverts back to my wife and my family and just the simple gratitude I have for them.
Yep.
But I've had other times where I've taken some of these retreats and had the right setting and made me think of my grandfather or my Uncle Vic and just little lessons they taught me along the way that made me who I am today.
Yeah. 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 And it's interesting because most of the entrepreneurs that I get to spend time around, the ones that are like really not just successful, from the outside looking in kind of perspective where people think, oh, like they run a successful business. It looks like that, but who are internally satisfied and fulfilled.
Yeah.
It really does come down to this emotional thing, that there is an emotional thing that drives them to do what they do. And
100%.
yeah.
I actually, one of the skinny books I'm working on, I call it Inside Outside. Too often the entrepreneurs have this great outside persona or facade, really, and the inside's generally a mess. It's imposter syndrome and many other things are going on inside. But we've all figured out a way to put our mask on for the outside world and look how great everything is. Well, it's not been my experience that it's always that great. It's hard. And it's not for everyone. And that's what makes it so rewarding when you're able to survive it, for sure. But I do think that inside outside, if you can get the inside right, what's really going on inside of you, if you can get that right, oh,
Yeah.
everything is so much better. I call that the deep work. You just got to really do that deep work
Yeah.
in order to get that inside right.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. Well, okay. So now that we've got a little bit of context set here, and people have a little bit of an idea of what inspires you, Dan, to do what you do, I want to shift gears just a little bit, and I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Dan, I'm really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
I tell you, this is a hard question you ask, because I've been intentional and fortunate. I don't use the word lucky. I know I'm fortunate because I put the work in to be fortunate, that I've had a lot of mentors that have had a very impactful, they've just had a big impact on me. So guys like Big Jim and Steve Perlman and Kevin Dunn, and I would put my grandfather in there, my Uncle Vic certainly as well, many, many others for sure. But I know you're trying to get at, hone in on one. And so I've been part of an organization that's, I would say, probably changed it's changed my life. And that is an organization called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. Big worldwide organization, which by being a member of that, it's allowed me to travel to over 30 countries and have friends in a friend network that's global. And I'm a guy from the Mars, Iowa, small town, Northwest Iowa. And yet I could call up any one of those people today and how's it going? And feel like just like we were together yesterday. Mm-hmm. But within EO, one of the benefits of being an EO is you get placed in a forum. And a forum consists of usually 7, maybe as high as 9, but on average 8 people.
Okay.
These people are like your personal board of directors. So one, their peer group, right? Because we're all entrepreneurs in the group. There's certain criteria you have to meet in order to even be in the Entrepreneurs Organization, or EO. So they all meet that criteria. And what that does is that just takes away so much of, hey, we're just all the same people because we've all met that criteria.
Yeah.
And, so this group is called VERUS, VERUS, which in Latin, loosely translated, means truth.
Okay.
And, although I've been in this group with a few of these members for many years, me and Deb Venable have been in it for the whole time together.
Wow.
And yeah, and you can't imagine life without that person. Mm-hmm. And there's others that have been in there for 15, 12, 10 plus years. And most forums don't last that long because they just lose the spark. They don't have someone who's trying to think about how to evolve it. But I want to tell you, this group, and so I don't know how to say it, but I'm going to say it because I think it is important. It's taken a lot of intentionality to determining who to let in. Some of our members have left. They sold their business, or they've, life circumstance, or they moved to another city, just things, life, right, has been introduced. And we never took the next person. We recruited the next person. We did it the hard way every time. And I would say maybe one little asterisk of one questionable one. The rest of them we got right.
Mhm.
And they're still, even though they might have moved on, are still like they've never moved on. They might live in a different city, but they're still a part of us, kind of hub and spoke, if you will.
Mhm.
But I want to go back to the idea of having a forum. And I would say it's an elevated state above a peer group. Because the idea behind a forum is that they are there for you and they love you enough to tell you the truth. And a lot of times that's painful when you hear the truth from someone that loves you.
Mhm.
But that's how much they love you, is they have to find the words, garner sometimes the courage themselves
Mhm.
to communicate in such a way that I can hear it, so that I can take that powerful message there and that love they're trying to send to me, and then get what I need out of it to help me resolve whatever issue I might be facing at that time.
Mhm.
And when you go through the overall EO global training for forum, they call it the 5%. So think of the world as almost all of us are in the 80% zone. That's being nice, being pleasant, being kind and cordial to each other. Please, thank you. Have a good day. How's the weather?
Mhm.
Then you start piercing through that 80%. Every little percent above the 80% is something special and different that most people don't experience, usually with their families, but not outside of that.
Okay.
And maybe your best friend, which most people have one or two of them, might get into that zone.
Mhm.
So we call our forum, and I 100% believe it, a 2% forum, because not only did we pierce the 5%, which is super rare, but we're so dialed in with each other that we now operate from the word hello at the 2%, in that 2% zone. And we can just go there. If any one of my forum mates called me, or if I called them, and if they need me, and trust me, we've been through it all. I'm going to give you an example or two here in a minute. It's that instant. We can get there in a millisecond.
Mhm.
And I never experienced that ever before. As good, I have wonderful friends. I call it the Golden Circle of Friends, which is another skinny book I'm working on. But this Golden Circle of Friends, these guys would, everyone in my forum, be at the center, the absolute center, like the place you would put your best friend,
Yeah.
or you place your family. It's that good if you have the right forum or peer group. So just to give you a little taste of, and I'll go high level first, and then I'll do an experience share with you. So we've had everything from divorce and being cheated on, and to selling a business. One of the greatest updates of all time was when one of our forum mates sold his company, and his update was his deposit slip that all he did was showed it to us, and had a whole bunch of zeros on it. And we just said, meeting over. We went to the best restaurant we could find, because we were going to stick him with a really big wine bill that night for sure. And that's been our tradition ever since. When somebody sold, we just go and blow it out, and they're buying.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there's a couple really important things about a forum that people should know, and you can look this part up. It's called Gestalt protocol. Gestalt is where you do not give advice. You speak from experience. So in my experience, this happened, or in my experience, I want to share this with you, which when you're the person that has the issue, you hear that totally different than I'm telling you to go do this. It's a very different way to receive information, which allows me to filter out what's valuable to me and also what's not valuable to me. Because really, I only usually need a couple nuggets from their experience, because I know it's their truth. I hear that differently than someone just trying to tell me what to do. So I'll share this with you. What's your rule on F-bombs on this podcast?
If you feel led, you're totally fine, Dan.
It's because it's part of the truth of the story. Okay.
Yeah,
So
very good.
if it wasn't, I would avoid it. So this is how intense it can be and how valuable it was for me. So this
Okay.
is me going, I'm piercing through the 5%. I think we might end up at the 2% here.
Okay.
So I had a business where we were developing hotels, and I guess the easiest way to say it would be a right-hand, quote unquote, right-hand man, right? That key person that was trusted to, do the right things, to run the business. There was total transparency, no secrets, that type of relationship, the most precious relationship you can have. And that person betrayed me on the highest level, including not only stealing money from me in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but from a wide range of investors.
Wow.
And first of all, I've never been betrayed personally on that level before, where I had such faith in a person. And so on this hotel, we're about 30 days away from opening it. I'm just learning about this, totally blindsided. The other really bad thing was they deleted all the QuickBooks, all the accounting. So no idea, 2 years or 5 years of a business, but 2 years of that hotel project, gone, disappeared. And yet I have bills to pay and all this other stuff. And I'm in complete crisis. I didn't know I was in crisis. My coach, who I went to, and I was hiding from the world because the world wanted to get me and they wanted answers from me, and I didn't have them.
Wow.
And he said, you need to call it what it is. This is a crisis, and you need to start acting like it's a crisis, or it's going to hurt you more than it already is. So that was helpful, frankly. And I then went to one of my mentors, but most importantly, I went to my forum, Varus. And here's some of the people who love me more than anyone. And they simply, when I was telling them what was happening and I was desperate for someone to help me get out of this deep hole that I was in, one thing kept being said to me. They said, don't worry, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I was like, okay, I guess that's what people say. And I kept going on. And then I heard it a second time. This is in the same day by the same group.
Wow.
Then I heard it a third, maybe fourth time. And I'm not a person that snaps. I'm pretty even keeled. And it just started wearing on me. Light at the end of the tunnel, light at the end of the tunnel, light at the end of the tunnel. There it is again. I literally said, after hearing it for the third or fourth time, fuck you guys. I need light in the tunnel. Get in here with me right now. I'm in crisis. You're the people I love more than anyone, that can help me more than anyone. Help me figure this out.
Yeah. Quit
going through the motion and help me take action, because I was stuck. I was paralyzed. And it was, well, first of all, we sat there and laughed because I actually snapped for the first time. So we all got a big chuckle out of that. But we literally rolled up our sleeves and said, okay, and we developed a plan and helped dig my way out of that. They helped shine some light in that tunnel, and I was able to manage it. And ultimately, that project, 64 people said yes to a deal. that if one of them would have said no, the whole thing would have fell apart. I'd still be in court and bankruptcy and a bunch of other stuff today.
Wow. Wow.
And it's the power of having that type of trust and being able to handle that, even laugh at a really crucial moment, snap, if you will, because they knew I probably needed that, whatever, they were thinking at the time, but then just getting after it right away to create a plan of action.
Yeah.
And I've got 30 more stories like that, and they all have 30 as well.
That is a really amazing story, Dan. And man, there's so much there. And kudos to you for like being able to recognize and speak up, and in order to speak up and say what you needed. Hey, light at the end of the tunnel. Shit, I need light now. And for you, for one, you had to be able to identify and articulate that, and then let them know this is what I need, and like not later, but now. We got to deal with this now. And and so that's like two things is it's you being able to have clarity around and identify what you need, and then state that and ask for what you need while being surrounded by the right kind of people who, like you said, that there is that 100% trust between each other, and it's, I've experienced this, and there's these two trusts. There's trust in somebody's character, and then there's trust in somebody's competence. And when we have those two trusts, and that's what you have with all of these people, is you have trust in their character and trust in their competence. And when those two trusts are present, it eliminates friction. And when there is zero friction, stuff happens now. Because it's that lack of trust that's always the friction that just slows stuff down,
Yeah, so well said.
Yeah.
You know, it just hit me. So I don't know the dollar amount, but think about the name of this podcast, $1 Million Relationships. And frankly, I don't think it'd be $1 million, but at the same time, priceless in that moment of getting me out of that swirl that I was in, of just hiding from the world, and get me to take action because of the trust in the relationship. I don't know, I can't calculate dollars that quick in my head, but it would have been probably had $1 million impact on me. A lot of that being in hard dollars for sure. But beyond that, the how do you put value in dollars and cents on, all the negative energy that would have been probably still with me to this very day, some 2.5 years later. And all that, having to fight through that for all that time, probably had a bigger impact than $1 million. So I just hadn't put it in that context. So now.
Well, that was really incredible, Dan. That was really incredible. And I know, you and I were talking a little bit before we hit the record button, and you were like, well, I've been really thinking about this question and where to go with this, Kevin. And it's really been, I can't remember the exact word you used, but it was like, it was weighing on you. And I was like, Dan, we're just going to go with whatever feels right at this moment right here, because that's going to be exactly what we need to be talking about. And this turned out pretty exactly dead on. So this is good stuff. Okay, so I'm just curious, and I'm just going to ask one follow-up question based on this.
Yeah, please.
It is really interesting. You kind of have alluded to it. If you look at, any of these relationships that you've had with your partners in this group, and where it's allowed you to make a really huge impact in the world, but yet at the same time, that would have never happened if not for your relationship with whoever that was. And I'm just like really curious to hear an example that just immediately comes up for you.
I'm not kidding you. I could give you
Lots.
multiple examples with each one of them.
Yeah.
But I'll give you one because it popped in my head for whatever reason.
There you go.
So I was debating whether or not to be an EOS implementer or not. The whole world was telling me to do it. I was probably resistant because everyone was telling me to do it. Just that stupid go against the grain mentality sometimes we all have. And one of the guys in the forum, and frankly, a couple other guys in the EO, but one of the guys in the forum, his name's Kevin Hundle.
Okay.
Kevin, we're at a bar and we just got done with the forum and we were having like a beer or something. And he literally sat me on a bar stool, took my drink, put it to the side, eyeball to eyeball, and said, "You are perfect for this. Get out of the way of yourself." And this is not how we do our forum, right? Because we're all gestalt and we speak from experience. Half, I don't know if the word's mad, but kind of ticked off a little bit that I wasn't hearing what people were saying to me. And the other half of him was just like, I want to see you do it. He was almost excited about it at the same time. And frankly, right when that was happening, I was in a really state of flux and having a little bit of a hard time figuring out what to do. Money was getting tight. Just all these kind of life things were all converging at one time. So making a decision was really important. But him sitting me down, eyeball to eyeball, and just speaking his truth to me, signed up like 2 days later. And I was like, I hear you now. And you're right, I wasn't really listening. And I can tell you that in different names, different forms, but has happened repeatedly over the past, now going on 24 years.
Yeah. Wow. That's really phenomenal. And, I love hearing stories and experiences like the ones that you have shared, because it once again, it is just such a testament to the power of relationships, the power of trust in someone's character, trust in someone's competence, and what can happen. And it's interesting, this podcast has been going for almost 2 years. And we called it the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And that'll stay. But it's interesting, when I used to go to events or whatever, and people would ask me, Kev, what do you do? I would say I facilitate $1 Million relationships. But at the same time, then I would back that up by saying, and really it has absolutely nothing to do with a dollar figure, but yet everything to do with the relationships,
100%.
And until like I had a moment like what you talked about, where I just had this epiphany. I was having a conversation with an entrepreneur friend of mine who I just have this amazing connection with her. And just, I have we just have this trust among the two of us and stuff. And during a conversation, it just came to me, and like that emotional experience that you talk about, where as soon as I made the realization, as soon as I had the clarity in that exact moment, it just kind of washed over me. And I said to her, I said, my gosh, I said, Blake, I said, I am not the guy who facilitates $1 million relationships. And she goes, well, who are you, Kev? I said, I am the guy who facilitates relationships that impact millions of people's lives. And that little distinction, I mean, it seems so minute, but yet it was everything, you know. It was everything. It changed the trajectory of everything. I look at what has happened since then. And now, you know, when somebody asks, what do you do? And I say, I facilitate relationships that impact millions of people's lives. There is nothing that needs to be backed up with. There is no clarification that needs to be made beyond that, you know.
So first of all, good on you, because that power of purpose, I'm going to share with you my story, but I think is rare and special. Not everyone gets there. Not everyone gets there. A lot of people have nice little slogans, but where it actually means something and you're living it, that's rare and special. So here's mine. I didn't think we'd be talking about this one, but you're leading me. So we're going where we're going, right? This is what it's meant to be. So I had done a lot of work on purpose, my purpose in particular, and I've been doing a really good job living it for probably the last 7 to 10 years, somewhere in there. I'm not always great with my years, but and it was to simply said, do good things with good people. Mm-hmm. And it was powerful to me. Every new client I looked at, were they good people? Could we do good things together? So I'm actually visualizing a life with them together 1, 2, 3 years into the future. And usually my test is, could I still have a beer with this person 2 or 3 years into the future, is kind of how I visualized it. And that served me well. And I thought I was good. And a year and a half ago, I had a health scare and had to have and all of it's good. So just so you hear the end of it, because it sounds scarier than, well, it was scary at the time. And I'm in an MRI machine. I think if I remember right, this MRI was like 45 minutes long.
Wow.
And yeah, it's like the surgical one, because I'm going to have a 7-hour surgery after that. So they have to get it exactly right. And I remember being in that MRI and just being so emotional, because I'm scared. I'm pretty messed up for what is happening to me, but I also know that good things are going to happen after I have this surgery. And I mean, it was to the point, you're in that MRI machine, which is like a tomb, you know, and all the banging and all this stuff's going on. And although you have headphones on, I was so emotional. I don't know if I was crying, but just my eyes were uncontrollably watering. And I could not get myself to stop. So much so that my ears filled with water, completely full of water. And I remember once we got all done with it, I asked I don't know, I guess you call it the tech, I wanted a pen and paper. And I felt I just had to write something. At this time, I could barely walk, barely see. I was having all these real extreme circumstances happening to me. And she scrambled, got me a Sharpie and a piece of, printer paper out of the printer by the MRI machine. And I sat there and I couldn't figure out what to write, but yet I had this overwhelming feeling like I needed to write something. Mm-hmm. And what I wrote was do more. Didn't write another word on there. Just do more. And so, okay, I'm almost like, what the hell does that mean? But that's all that came out. So I guess I was good. So I just kind of put the piece of paper away, went through a lot of stuff, and led me up to this surgery. And actually have a pretty elaborate writing on it now, because I've spent a lot of time on it. But 2 days later, I'm haunted by this do more. And then it hit me. Do more good things with good people. Just like you had that little twist, that little bit of clarity, that do more piece has lit a fire inside of me that I've not experienced in decades.
Wow. Wow.
That do more is why I'm writing these skinny books and trying to get that whole skinny platform figured out. That do more is why I'm figuring out this retreat center, because I want this place for entrepreneurs to come and get that clarity and that emotion and become a better version of themselves.
Yeah.
So that, I hear you, brother. You know, just like you got your little, just a little bit of altered thinking has changed my course for the better.
Yeah. 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 And you're right. You know, I really don't feel that as entrepreneurs, we really begin not just, you know, doing well in business, but like really thriving, really making an impact until there is that emotional thing that drives us.
Yeah.
And because otherwise we're just kind of like, just, you know, I mean, without that inspiration, you know, that, man, I'll tell you what, man, you start talking with an entrepreneur who is driven like that, who is just inspired by the,
Yep.
you know what? I will tell you, I have been extremely blessed in that most of the entrepreneurs I get to interview for this podcast are those entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are special people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so,
I think it's transformation is when that all comes together. There's a transformation that happens. It's a human
totally.
transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Well, Dan, for anybody listening to this, I just want to give you the opportunity, you know, for anybody listening to this going, dang, Kevin, I really like Dan. I appreciate Dan. I appreciate what he shared. I love the way that he shows up. Is there any resources or any other way anybody can check out what you're doing in this world and how they can check out you guys, what you're up to?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of interesting time right now, but so fast forwarding a little bit, one, you can always find me on the EOS Worldwide website. You know, I'm an implementer and they've got all of us listed on there, but
Okay.
probably more importantly is, you know, we're creating this, the skinnyplatform.com.
Okay.
And that is certainly in development. We are working on it, but that's going to be really important for me to make connection and build relationships there. The skinnyplatform.com. I have been blessed that I haven't had to put a lot of energy into socials and, you know, getting out there on LinkedIn and things like that. But so we're now, because we're going to create this, we are creating this platform. So now it's the, you know, the skinny on LinkedIn and YouTube shorts and all that other stuff. We're starting to develop all that. So that is coming. It's in the works. So if we're not there when you check, please keep checking because it's coming.
Okay.
And I think hopefully today might give you a little bit of a feel or an insight to what it might be like.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Well, I just really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. And I just want to, you know, I just want to make sure, you know, and is there any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap here?
No, but I guess yes. I was going to say no, and just to kind of play along with the wrap. So I didn't plan on sharing the do more thing and good things with good people. You know, you inspired me there, but why we're talking, we're doing more. You're doing more. I'm doing more. It's doing good things with good people. It's not lost on me that these things keep happening.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You know, when we get in alignment, I just want to, you know, I for any entrepreneur listening, you know, when we are just in alignment with who we are and the way that we want to show up and all that stuff is in alignment, all the other stuff is just going to take care of itself. We're just going to attract the people into our world who want to support us, who want to be a part of what we're doing and stuff. And like, we don't, it doesn't become this big, huge, like hustle. It's not this hustle and grind kind of thing, you know. Is there work involved? Yeah, there's work involved, but
Yeah.
it's inspired work, you know. It's inspired. There's a different feel around it. There's an excitement around it, you know. And so I just want to, you definitely exemplify that, Dan. And I just want to, once again, thank you for taking the time to have this conversation. Really appreciate it. And I'm just excited to share this with other entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs.
Thank you. Thank you very much.